community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and today is, well, it's Discord Tuesday on this channel. Yeah, on Discord Tuesday, as we do all week long. And welcome there, Cameron. Thank you very much for joining in. We take a subject and we talk about it long form. And this week we're talking about limitations and micro worlds. Now, we could have talked limitations in micro worlds. Oh, really, Kitty? Well, glad to have you there. Okay. Wow. That was a very interesting start to the day. I think my hand is going to start bleeding there. I have some cats who like to be internet famous. They're trying their hardest to do so. Oh, wow. Anyway, for this week, we're talking about limitations and micro worlds. And the idea behind this is that taking our chosen role-playing game and hyper-focusing in a particular region or using a particular rule set of the world to the point that the capabilities, the choices for the game master and or the players is very, very limited. And is it something that we'd like to do? How do we sell it to our players? How do we use it? And of course, here on Discord Tuesday, we want to talk about mechanics. That's why the gears and stuff up in the corner. Today, we want to talk about some mechanics, and I want to bring up a few things to start out. Now, Cameron says, I'm currently writing up the first in a series of one-shots loosely following the plot of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Just thought I'd share. How do we stat out the rabbit and the knight? Although it could be pretty easy to do the mounted combat. You just have a couple of NPCs with coconuts in the background. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool. Yeah, you have to stat out the coconut shells. Hell yeah. Although, if it isn't going to be hilarious, I'm not sure what that would look like in all seriousness. If you wanted to make it serious, but I think you could. I don't know. I think that might be pretty cool, though. I don't think they would get it. Yeah. Exactly. And Rick was like, "Yeah, how much additional movement do they give you? This is important stuff." Yeah. Plus, plus, plus 30 feet of movement as long as you're not seeing them. Because remember, they were real far away. They're like, "He's running at me so far away" with the music and stuff. All right, so I wanted to bring up something that is both antithetical. It's equal and opposite when it comes to limitations and micro worlds. Yeah. Deadman says it was the legendary Vorpal Rabbit plus 5 Vorpal Rabbit. No. And yet it is the kind of thing that when it comes to micro worlds, we as player characters, and I mean as players and those of us that make characters and game masters seem to involve ourselves in. Let me give you an example. All right, so there's a world known as Ravenloft. We all know what Ravenloft is, right? It's kind of gothic underworld. I mean, yeah, gothic dark world of a vampire lord that controls, this setting that's in between time and space, and you get trapped there and such. And yeah, Tesla's like, the French knight equals bard with vicious mockery. Yeah. Man, we might need to have to do a whole week of like comedy. That might be kind of cool. But when you hear Ravenloft, which side of Ravenloft do you fall into? Do you fall on the side of Ravenloft where you're like, great, I get to make a necromancer and not stick out like a sore thumb, or are you the person that's like, ooh, I have to fight against insanity and the dark reaches of evil and escape this hellish place of gothic horror, right? Yeah. Yeah, Omen's like, actually, maybe we can discuss comedy RPGs next time. I agree with you, Omen. Maybe we can. Yep. Yeah. um, Ravenloft is in a pocket dimension. Let's talk about and pocket dimensions perfectly fit into like micro worlds, which is kind of the point. Hey, let's talk about Dark Sun, right? Which side of Dark Sun do you fall on? Do you fall on uh, the gritty, the gritty survivalist part of Dark Sun, where metal does not exist and there are defilers whose very magic destroys life whenever it's used, and there's a pretty good chance that your player character will die, which is why you start off, what is it, like in the old days, it was like you started off at third level, because if you start off any levels below that, you're pretty much cannon fodder. Or are you like, yay, psionics? Right? What I'm getting at is, yeah, Cameron's like, no seriousness involved. The first one is about a weremoose loose in a hospital in Sweden in 1975. What the hell? That's a weird collection of words. Laugh out loud. To get on topic, I'm going to apply. I'm not kidding. I'm going to apply some limitations on character choice and story movement. And the reason why I'm bringing these things up is because, like yesterday, brought up the idea of aquatic adventures, right? And come on, kitty, come on. Yeah, they can't see. Have a seat. There you go. um, on one hand, sometimes we get ourselves wrapped up in the type of micro world we're looking for, right? Whether that micro world is Ravenloft, or I want my players to go into Planescape and visit the various planes of existence, or hey, I got a great one shot. I'm going to have my players visit some kind of like wicked Isle of Dread or something. Uh, X1, I believe. Anyway, there might be a one shot that, or one off. It might be a multi shot, but it might be a one off that the players and yourself as the game master or dungeon master, like, wow, this is a great thing. I've got this great idea. I think they're really going to love it. And it's important that we find out what side of the fence we fall on. Are we falling on the how do we survive this? How do we gain this? How do we navigate the difficulties it takes to be in this micro world? Whether that micro world is, say, Planescape, where hey, let's go visit the plane of fire, and then when they get there, the PCs start burning up because they're suffering, I don't know, 4d6 fire damage every round they're there. Or is it more of a narrative thing where, hey, I don't really want to get hurt by what's here. I just want to be part of the narrative in being in a place that my character normally isn't. And for good or bad, coming to the table, even players who sometimes are like, yeah, I want to play Dark Sun because it's about some hard, gritty survivalism. Is that what they really want, or is there a subconscious part of that that's like, you know what? Even though I said that, I really don't like counting food rations, and I really don't want my weapons to break. And oh, by the way, do I seriously have to make saving throws for all my equipment? I just wanted to be a badass in this dark post-apocalyptic medievalish world without all the baggage, right? And I think that the idea behind that, when it comes to using mechanics, is that, strangely enough, meta wise, it might be a pretty good idea to put the mechanics forward, in front of the players and explain to them exactly what might be happening, even though their characters might not be involved in such a thing. You know, yeah. Rickard says, now that I think about it, my main setting is actually a micro world setting with disconnected islands being almost self-contained pockets, so each island becomes almost a micro world. In a like, I'll say in a classic like archipelago piracy kind of world sailing thing, I think that perfectly fits in with like a micro world, right? Where like if you're on a sailing ship, you're going to different islands, and each island has like an ecology that's a bit different, or society or something like that. I think it fits in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's nothing. My point is, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. I honestly, if you have like gaming ADD like I do, if you're a polygamist, I like that idea. I think that's one of the things that draws people into the Planescape setting, right? I mean, in Planescape, you're basically going from dimension to dimension. Heck, I love transhumanism. That's where the Pandora gates come from in Eclipse Phase. You go through a science fiction doorway, and boom, you're in another world instantly, and you get to play with that idea. But some players and even game masters are drawn, our percentages shift and change based on where we get drawn to, right? Are we drawn to the harsh realities of needing to survive in an intergalactic world that has no safety net for us to survive there? Or do we want to just go to some place that's really cool and it's more narrative, but we really don't want to deal with the baggage of not being able to breathe, no gravity, there's acid rain and poisonous gases and radiation and that kind of thing, right? Omen says, I'm working on something similar to that because I live in an actual archipelago. Yep. Um, there just seems something romantic and awesome about being an explorer in the age of sail. Uh, I can't agree with you more there, Omen. As a matter of fact, I think it's 3 seasons, maybe 4, of an old television show called Black Sails. And while some of the acting was a little bit over the top, I love that show. The concept of the age of sail in the Caribbean and such, which is and with the United States being above the north of the Caribbean, but being very close, it kind of hits home. So I really loved it. Rickard says, no, I'm talking. There is an island which has islands on it. Oh, okay. There is an island that has islands on it where you can play that piracy game if you want, but it is completely removed from the medieval Europe island. Think less island and more pocket dimension. Oh, okay. So it's not even you're I'm thinking literally sailing on ships going from island to island, and you're like, no, you're saying that it is far more yeah, you're saying define define over the top. Are we talking Shatner? Cage? More Shatner than than Cage. It's not that bad. It's not bad as Nicolas Cage. No, 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 no. But it some of the acting's a little bit overwrought, but considering the age of sail, it actually fits. So yeah, I like that show, Black Sails, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, hey, thanks, Dead Man. Yeah, I don't remember how many seasons it had. I'm thinking 4. I'm thinking 4. But anyway, the when it comes to certain limitations, like one limitation, when I say very simple mechanical limitation that you find in oh, Rickard is so funny. No bees then? No, nothing like that. One simple limitation that we may find ourselves using as a one-off and when visiting some other place and we have a great idea is a very uh, mechanical one that's very easy to insert and remove from the game, and that one is the insanity rules, right? You guys know of course about Call of Cthulhu and the whole idea of player characters delving into the dark reaches of the unknown for whatever case there may be. And of course, in fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons, we have ourselves optional rules, and one of those optional rules is, well, insanity, right? And again, just a simple one-off where, hey guys, I think it would be really cool if we use this thing. How do you guys feel about it? And they may go, yeah, horror, and we're traveling to another land, and in many ways that's what Ravenloft is built around, right? It's, hey, would you yeah, Dead Man says, yep, 4 seasons, 8 episodes, and 8 episodes in season one, 10 in each later season. Wow, is that many episodes? Kind of cool. All right. Uh, I forgot that there were that many episodes, but I do remember there being a lot of there was a lot of turnover and chaos in that show because, of course, it's the age of piracy and people got killed pretty quickly off in that show. But and there were some dark themes in it as well. Uh, anyway, the idea that you could insert, say, like, hey, let's go to, you don't even have to go to Ravenloft, but I'm using that as an example where the players go off to this other part of your world and everyone says, hey, let's use these rules to do a thing. And does that mean, like, the insanity rules change how the player characters, interact in the world? Sure, of course it does. And that's what we're talking about, right? Where maybe we want to throw something. Yeah, Dead Man says all episodes are titled in Roman numerals. Yeah, I forgot that was the case, but when you look at each episode when it starts out, and it's got a really good intro music to it as well. It's pretty cool. The idea that we are choosing to do a thing that either causes a complication or limits what we can do. Examples for that are like coming up with ideas where magic has been limited or altered or shifts around. Like, hey, let's play in a world where, or let's go to a region of our world where magic is in chaos and we're going to use the sorcerer chaos magic tables or something. Or every time you cast magic, you're going to summon some kind of evil or demonic creatures that are going to hunt you down, like, blind displacer beasts come, padding through the city, searching for any source of magic or what have you. And while we do love the idea behind that, it's a pretty good idea to make sure that we talk with our with our players, so that they know what their characters can do, because it changes the dynamic, right? I mean, if you're going to play in, say, Dark Sun, or a world like it with a post-apocalyptic survivalist setting, you're going to have to explain that, hey, guys, are you expecting to be able to pick, I don't know, Leomin's tiny hut, Goodberry, and create food and water, right? Because what would be the point in playing in a post-apocalyptic game of harsh survival if you could just pick those things in for your as a player option, right? Some players are going to say, well, I don't know why I can't pick that. And everyone's looking like, it wasn't the whole point to make this survivalist, or are you just trying to find an easy button, and you just want you want the facade of the trouble, but you really don't want the trouble in that it brings about, right? In what's the game? Tomb of Annihilation, a recent, a recent release, or relatively recent release from WotC, where you're supposed to go to this jungle island and try to survive through the jungle, and then find the Tomb of Annihilation, which is like a soft homage to the Tomb of Horrors, and it's supposed to be survivalist. Are the players like, nah, I kind of like, it's like, yeah, I get you were supposed to survive through the jungles and it's supposed to be hard, but can we just get to the front door of the dungeon because that's what I want? Or are they really into it? And finding that out and finding out where your players subconsciously fit, or to be honest with ourselves, I think is pretty important. Um, yeah. Rickard says every time the players use one of their powers, the pocket dimension shrinks. Ooh, I like that. Um, yeah, for me, I like I like dark survivalist and gritty games. Um, I like the idea, or rather, I like to immerse myself in survivalist style games. I love Call of Cthulhu because it's a game where it's like, yeah, I might not survive, but the idea is not to survive; it's to survive longer than everybody else. With your mind intact and or your body. So, yeah. Um, Now, Omen says, I remembered reading an Ironclaw novel, which, being based on the Caribbean in the Age of Sail, had really dark themes for a furry story, themes of slavery and worse. Yeah, that show Black Sails actually taps upon that. Um, and you kind of need to know where your player's mind is at when you think about that, right? Like in the Age of Sail, are we talking about dark themes like slavery and scurvy and walking the plank and starvation and dehydration out on the harsh seas and losing limbs? Or are we talking cinematic? Are we talking swinging from ropes and having swashbuckling with a lot of buckles to swash, and deep diving for treasure and having snappy comebacks while you fight? Yeah, drunk pirates. Exactly. Are we talking cinematic style? Is that what we're talking about in the Age of Sail, or are we talking about the you know mutinies and backstabbing and the fact that, yeah, more likely than not, you're probably not going to survive this thing, right? And where do you sit? Yeah, Ricker says, probably talking about a setting that use the powers too much, and that border town will be erased from existence. Ooh, and having sometimes in our micro worlds, we'll have one of the things is having um, some kind of consequence to what the player characters do, right? Dark Sun, if you use magic, it destroys life. In Rickard's setting, if you use magic, the borders of, like, I'm assuming, of like time and space and the dimensions start to shrink, and these places start to disappear. And maybe some of those, like in a post-apocalyptic world, do you hoard all the resources for yourself so you can survive another day, or do you share them with strangers from the zombie apocalypse, knowing that maybe, just maybe, one of those strangers might turn on you or something like that? Yeah, Dante says, come to think of it, every time I made a character, I intentionally put in survival skills, but rarely ever used them. And you know, um, post-apocalyptic survival is probably one of the easiest and most common things. Nothing wrong with doing it, but it's one of the most common, like, one-offs we have in role-playing games, where we count arrows, or we count food, or we have a mechanism to track our resources, or what have you, or remaining some kind of way to keep ourselves removed from the evil that's in the land before they catch us. And there might be some kind of mechanic before the Eye of Sauron finds you, or whatever. And there are plenty of games and mechanisms that allow us to do that, but everyone at the table needs to be on the same page, because while one person is thinking about being is buckling a bunch of swashes, swinging from ropes, they might not be into that same game if they have to worry about um, boiling rats or dumping dead bodies out of the hold of their ship because they've got slaves stacked in there and there's some kind of disease running rampant, and they're into human or child slavery or something, right? That might not be the thing that they're into. And so just finding out, like truly finding out what they're into and where their heart is at, and then going, okay, guys, I get we're doing this and it's got a really dark theme. How about we only play about 3 sessions and we kind of end it right there? Because some might go, yeah, sure, let's do that, right? Um, Cameron says, I feel like WotC needs to put taglines on the covers of their adventure paths. Like, quote, do you dare transverse the jungles of Chult to find Tomb of Annihilation and save the world? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, for example, they included um they included in the Tomb of Annihilation this idea, I believe it is, it's like you lose one, every individual that was resurrected um loses 1 hit point a day. So there's like a weird necro life loss timer involved in it, so that there is a reason for, there's this attention timer in the background. And you guys know I love tension timers. Something that you put in your back pocket as the dungeon master or the game master to keep the players moving forward so they don't suffer from too much analysis paralysis. And it sets the players in a straight line goal, especially if you're using like a micro world, to get them, put a fire under their feet to get them to move forward, right? And sometimes you might need to do that, especially uh, in a world where there's a lot of um, harsh side effects. The players might want to move pretty fast in these harsh worlds to get to where they're going. Like, let's say a world like Mad Max, right? Running out of gas, running out of water, sandstorms, of course, roving banditry and those kind of things, poisonous snakes and scorpions. Those are things designed, if you're talking about Mad Max as a role playing game, to get the PCs moving, to get Mad Max to get the hell out of there and get involved in the story, right? Because if you sit still, chances are you're more likely to die sitting still than if you are moving forward. And that's the selling point of a lot of harsh, I'm using the word post-apocalypse, although it's not necessary to make it post-apocalyptic. But even in Planescape, more likely than not, players don't want their characters remaining still in a lot of these worlds, because sitting still is going to get you killed. Sitting on a plane of fire is going to get you burned up. Sitting in a plane of air is going to get you zapped by lightning, or tossed into the nether voids because one of these continent-sized storms comes and sweeps you away, or you go down to the 9 hells and you're going to be corrupted, or you go into the abyss, you'll be driven insane, or what is it, world of pandemonium, and et cetera, right? So one of the best things about having these micro worlds is basically, putting a fire under the players' asses and go, guys, come on, listen, stop hanging around, get moving, let's get into the adventure, let's try to get to the end of the point where of the adventure, whether succeed or fail, and then get the hell out of there, and then move on to greener pastures and whatnot. Dead Man's like, the PC adventure RPG, don't starve together. Has weremoosies. The weremoose. I don't know what a moose sounds like, but I think it would be kind of cool. Oh man. Cameron says the blight also made it to where people could no longer be resurrected or be given life again without necromancy. I suspect it was probably to make the game more dangerous. Exactly. What was one of the mechanical things they had in the game in Tomb of Annihilation? I believe it was Death saves weren't a 50-50. I believe it was death saves moved up to a DC of 15. So there was a 75% chance per roll that you would fail it. So that had added an extra level. And again, Tomb of Annihilation is a micro world, right? It's here's the thing that's happening in this place for this particular time period. Hey guys, go ahead and try to go through it. Can you survive a killer module? Can you survive a killer dungeon? And I think sometimes while some things sound good on the surface, when we really dive into it, you go, ooh, maybe I don't want to get involved in it. Like I wanted to bring up aquatic adventures for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm doing a little bit of a oh, there it is. Deadman puts it. Don't starve together. The deer clops is a boss monster that is only active during the winter unless edited in world customization. And it puts the deer clops, the one-eyed deer. No. It looked pretty hilarious, but I wanted to bring up, and I'm doing a little bit of a plug here, so sorry about this, guys. But yeah, but for those who don't know, yeah, what is it? Cinematic environs. Okay, got the book right here, right? And this book, I don't know if you can see it, relatively thick. I don't know, 60 something pages, whatever, and it's all about the aquatic setting, right? Now, if you dive into what 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons has for, say, an aquatic setting, I don't know how many players would really want to do it. While on the surface, you're like, hey, let's all go down in the deep ocean and chew bubblegum and like Marine Boy and go down into the aquatic depths. But I'm going to read to you. I do this very rarely, but I'm going to read to you what the definition of going into the aquatic realm means. Now, mind you, there's a lot of words written in this, but what WotC has is very small. It's only like a paragraph or two, right? So, okay, you want to go down in the deep ocean? Here's what happens, or hell, you might even go into a lake. So, when adventurers pursue Sahuagin back to their undersea homes, fight off sharks in an ancient shipwreck, or find themselves in a flooded dungeon room, they must fight in a challenging environment. Underwater, the following rules apply. All right, now listen to this. This is for melee, missile, and resistances. Okay, so for melee, when making a melee weapon attack, a creature that doesn't have a swimming speed, either natural or granted by magic, has disadvantage on the attack roll unless the weapon is a dagger, javelin, short sword, spear, or trident. That's by WotC. That means every single attack roll is at disadvantage if you do not have a swimming speed. In addition, DMs are encouraged to create weapons for their own setting and or allow players to introduce weapons as well. Thrusting and piercing weapons are far more effective as they have less resistance from water due to a narrow and angular shape. All right, now, in addition to that, under missile weapons, a ranged weapon attack automatically misses a target beyond the weapon's normal range. Even against a target within normal range, the attack roll has disadvantage unless the weapon is a crossbow, a net, or a weapon that is thrown like a javelin, including a spear, trident, or dart. As above, a ranged weapon is effective if able to pass through the water with minimal profile. And lastly, for resistance, creatures and objects that are fully immersed in water have resistance to fire damage. So, I dare you to explain to your players where you're like, I've got this great aquatic adventure. Hey, guys, we're going to do this thing. And everyone's like, great, cool. This is going to be kind of cool. I've never done that. And then you tell them, oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, 99% of all your attack rolls and ranged attacks with weapons, unless they are in this specific narrow category, are going to be with disadvantage for the entire session. And oh, by the way, this is going to take 5 sessions. How many players are going to be like, I thought this was going to be fun. And after their 8th or 9th attack roll that they've missed, rolling at disadvantage and all. Yeah, hey, my rogue, I'm going to use my rogue and sneak attack. Well, you don't get advantage on that roll. It's just a regular roll. Are you serious? This is effing bullshit, right? It's you know. Come on, let's be honest. And the reason why I say that, I'm being a rather sarcastic because I think having an aquatic adventure is pretty awesome, right? I mean, dealing with that type of massive disadvantage when navigating in the underworld, underworld, jeez, having that massive disadvantage when navigating in an undersea environment and figuring out how to get around it or get past it, I think is a great idea because in many ways, when you want to challenge your players, what a great way to challenge them. But if you haven't had that discussion up front with the players, meaning like, are we going to circumvent this by giving the players some kind of access to some kind of swimming, breathing underwater, or some other, they all have a bubble around their head, or they're all chewing gum like Marine Boy, or some aquatic princess has kissed each character on the cheek to grant them this thing for the time being, right? Are we hand waving it and just using this as a narrative, or are we really delving into the mechanics of the disadvantages of it? Now, mind you, like I said, that portion of it was in 5th edition. The rest of this book deals with all the permutations of being underwater, whether it's geysers and underwater lava and tropical regions and frozen lakes and all that kind of business, right? So anyway, I wanted to bring that up as an example of like, where's your mind sitting? Are you sitting into the narrative and the cinematics? Like, wow, wouldn't it be kind of cool to swim into like an Atlantis type of sunken city and use a bunch of aquatic creatures, and how fun would this be? Or are you on the other side where you're like, I don't know. I mean, disadvantage on every attack, unless it's this narrow scope. I don't know. And mind you, remember, if your character doesn't have a swim speed, that means basically you're going to have to start making like a ton of athletics checks. And again, in a 3-dimensional world, you're going to be at such a capital D disadvantage against everything else that can not only move faster than you, but physically move faster than you across the table. They also can maneuver much faster than you because they're adapted to their location, right? Omen says, well, I heard D&D 4th edition was infamous for being long and tedious. With aquatic characters, 2 is good. Where moose. That's a slick ass picture there, dead man. Damn, you found a good one. I'm liking that one. Yeah, where squirrel. Yep. Squirrel. Exactly. No, Kitty. No, I know you want to be part of it. Dante says, for me, situations like that always ran into get the magic fix. But then once they had the fix, it was like, well, why are we here now? Nothing is different than with the fix. Exactly. Yeah. Dante goes on to say, like water breathing charms or fire cloaks going into a volcano. And that's the thing, right? Are we going into the aquatic depths because we just think it's cool, but we want the bubble gum to survive? Or are we really truly trying to deal with the hazards of wearing plate armor and swimming down into the depths of I don't know, some arcane lake or something, and there's a dungeon or a sunken castle down there, and these 12th level characters are now under the while the dwarf with his hammer and the wizard with their spells and stuff like that is dealing with the idea that, yeah, your somatic excuse me, your verbal components, yeah, you can only do this once because you're going to drown because you're going to suck in a lot of water, right? Yeah, dwarf with your hammer of thunderbolts, you're probably going to electrocute your friends. And oh, by the way, your hammer has disadvantage because it can't move through the water, right? Yeah, Rickard. Yeah. Rickard says so that while combat paths might be underused, you let them use those other things. They seem to like to use, but can't because their attacks are always the best option. In a game where I think I know what you're talking about, like when combat is the hyper focus of a role playing game and it can't use those options, you're stuck with using other ways to solve. Oh, I get it. Okay. Rickard says if you do that, I would check what other things the players like to use and highlight those things. Basically, finding out other things they can use to solve the situation if combat isn't the best option, right? Um, because technically, right, you know, if you're going to have disadvantage, fifth edition, right? If every one of your attacks is going to have disadvantage, and like I said, unless they're in a narrow scope, all the thrusting, piercing weapons, right? Um, then the player characters are going to need, or it's going to highlight other ways to solve the situation. The problem, and this it's a good problem, but the problem is, are your players the type to look for other ways to solve the situation? If your wizard is like, oh, I've got fireball, and you go, yeah, but since you can't breathe underwater, you get to cast it once, and oh, by the way, everyone's got resistance to it, and that's they're the pyromancer, and that's the only way they have to solve a problem. If they only look at that and they're like, this game is stupid, you're nerfing my character, fold arms, pout, flip table, and you're going to have a situation. Whereas in another way, if you go, listen, pyromancer, um, in today's one-off game, no, you're not going to dominate. This is going to spotlight other people, or maybe you figure out a way for them. Maybe there are ways for them to utilize their abilities. They just have to be creative, like air pockets or something like that, right? In the case of a pyromancer. Yep. Rick goes on to say, yeah. Also, everyone knows you're out of gum if you're here to kick ass. Yeah. Listen, I'm old enough to remember when Marine Boy came on television, came on regular television, which I don't know if I would want to watch it today, but it's a pretty fun show. Although I don't know why he never shared his gum. Never really shared the gum. Um, and anyway, and lastly, he says, so like you have a player who tries to role play up their sleight of hand. Maybe you can have that come up in the combat instead of their backstab. Exactly. Like Dante was saying, like, hey, I like to make characters with survival skills, but I rarely get to use them. Maybe now's the time to start pulling out those skills, to pull on those threads that we never get a chance to do, which for me is the great reason for using these micro worlds where you have all these troubles where the mechanics start to like trip over themselves because it causes such complications. Then this is just for me, sure, going into aquatic depths and you read that right off the bat, you go, well, why would I want my character to be down there in the first place? And then you go, oh, that's why, and you start filling in the blanks. Like maybe those limitations are the reason why giant alligators and sharks are so dangerous, right? Maybe getting snatched by that tentacle from the kraken is a lot more dangerous than you think, instead of the players going, well, of course my character can kill a kraken. I can deal out 100 hit points, around with my paladin. And you're like, yeah, no, you can't. Not with disadvantage on those smites, you can't, right? Dante says for me, situations like that always ran into you get the magic fix. And he says, yeah, it was a shameless Dave plug. One reason I like your books is sometimes they give you ideas for how to still give a challenge when they do have the magic fix, right? Like climb checks on lava still get disadvantaged to make progress because the lava is fluid. So you might have the cloak that lets you walk on lava, but you still have to deal with other stuff. Yeah, I still remember when I wrote the first book, I was having a sarcastic conversation online about frozen potions in an Arctic region, right? And I was like, I wonder if potions freeze. And a bunch of PCs just had a battle with some frozen yetis and winter wolves in a frozen landscape. They get ready to sit down to drink their healing potions, and they break them out, and they're like slushies, and they're like, "Damn it!" Trying to stick them under their armpits, between their legs, and warm up the potion, right? And I was being sarcastic with it, but I was like, wait a minute. What if you had like frostbite on your fingers? Could you cast somatic spells? And that's where it came from. I know today's not Third Pillar Thursday, but my point being is some players don't like to embrace the idea that the things they normally get to do are now complicated. And I like the idea of make that a selling point. Like, hey guys, remember all that stuff you normally got to do because you're badasses? Well, in this micro world, and I say micro world meaning like, hey, you're going to another island, you're going to another part of the setting, you're going to a different dimension, you're traveling over the mountain pass, and there's something. Deadman, are you going to pull out all of the where rodentry? Where squirrels, where possums? I know where mooses. Oh man, so silly. But I think that sometimes also Dante brings up a good point. That's a pretty good image, and that's not a were possum. That's just a possum. In the Discord. By the way, guys, if you don't know, this show is TriCast over Twitch, YouTube, and our Discord server. Yeah. Rickard says the same. Got ahead of me. You got ahead of me, dude. All right. So Rickard says you still give everyone a time to shine, just not using what they normally do. Hell's yes. Right? Maybe the rogue. Let's go back to your point, right? Maybe your rogue used to backstabbing and sneak attacking because 5th edition, that's what rogues do, right? Or rather, that's what rogues do because under normal conditions, that's their best option. Maybe in this aquatic realm or whatever, maybe that's not the best option. Maybe the best option is, I don't know, using their stealth, using their sleight of hand, maybe talking their way out of something, right? Maybe maybe the better option is to use sleight of hand to tie a rope around someone and kick the anchor off the side of a ship and watch the comedy of errors as the rope starts to slide off the ship in its tangle very quickly, and then the bad guy realizes that the rope's tied around her ankle and they get dragged down into the ocean depths or something, right? Maybe that's the better option than a sneak attack. I don't know. That came out of my ass. But you get my point, where in a weird way, we take skills and we put them in a different category than spell casting and attacks, but they're still the same die roll, right? It's a d20 plus and minus the modifiers. And this might be the opportunity to make skill checks and skill usage, and hell, even beyond the skill usage, players using their own ingenuity, not talking about characters, but the player ingenuity, and letting that shine a lot more. Or hell, how about using, I don't know, what is it called? Teamwork. Maybe that's the thing that gets them out of the situation. Before we get to your other comment, there, Rickard, this is one of the contentions between where you get the little the little petty online battles between people who love OSR and modern gaming. It's the difference between, I go into the room, I take my 10-foot pole, I poke the floor, I look behind all the items in the room. I want to feel in the rock and on the floor. I feel behind the tapestry. I open up the drawers of the in the bedroom. I lift up the bed. What do I see? And the dungeon master describes. That's OSR versus, oh, when I walk in the room, I'm gonna make a perception check. What do I see? Uh, Mind you, most of us fall somewhere in the middle, right? Hey, I'm gonna look under the bed. All right, give me an investigation check, right? Tell me what you're gonna do. Then we might get into the mechanics. But maybe you should tell me what you're gonna do first so that we can describe, so we can get into the narrative, right? Whereas in the OSR, the dice might not even come out. It's what are you going to do to solve the situation? Great. Oh, that's a great idea. Hey, I'm going to take a wedge or a piton and wedge the door open so it doesn't slam shut behind us. Great. Okay, you've done that thing. No die roll needed, right? And this is where I think some game masters or dungeon masters really want their players to be more involved. Don't walk into the room and say, let me make a perception check. It's, I'm going to walk into the room and investigate what's going on. I'm going to look around and poke and prod things, because if I spend 80 hours designing the dungeon, please poke and prod my world. We love that from you guys as players, right? Rickard says, as an example, says a rogue player who likes to pick pockets and swipe people's watches from their wrists. I like that. Actually, I like that a lot. DM to the rogue player, what's your passive perception? Rogue gives a number like, oh, it's X something. Right? DM, okay, so you notice those arm locks that the monster men use to not drop their weapons have a latch similar to a wristwatch. Ah, right. So if you're like, I could imagine that, like if you're swimming, you have like a bladed weapon, but there's a rope or a chain or something attached to it. Maybe so you don't drop it when you're swimming, right? Much like real life divers have like a wrist cord attached to a knife. Maybe that's how the rogue slips that weapon away from them. That's which is a great idea, right? Hey, I'm going to get in grappling range. By the way, when we're engaged in grappling, I want to slip the knot loose or the lock or swipe it off of their wrist or something, which I love that. Or maybe there's a magical ring that allows somebody to water breathe and you snatch it off of their finger. Rickard goes on to say the alternative, fighter that also likes to role play being a blacksmith. DM says, give me a roll. Fighter rolls a 10. DM says, you realize you don't need to kill these fishmen. If you get one good hit in, you can damage the armor that they won't be able to navigate in the water any longer. Ooh, like a it's like a you can use like a targeting, I'm going to air quote targeting roll, so that you do something like, I don't know, cut the strap, thing like that causes like their ability to swim, or it comes tangled around their waist, or it blocks their vision or something like that, or it creates more resistance in the water or what have you. And I like that kind of stuff because, yep, or it dents their armor in such a way that their armor makes them unstable. Exactly. And that might be the thing intellectually that allows the players to navigate the world. Hell, here's a real world thing you could do if you're in an aquatic realm. I'm going to dump chum in the water and try to swim away, right? Hey, if I kill one of the fishmen, will the blood hungry berserk sharks go after one of the fishmen? And you as the game master start smiling. You're like, I don't know. Will that happen? And the players are like, hey guys, instead of us all splitting off and trying to fight the fishmen, how about we gut one of the fishmen and rip his organs out and then watch the sharks go after that one, right? Maybe that's the thing that gets you out of the situation when you swim into the grotto or something like that, right? There might be ways around it. And as game masters, if we give enough, we allow ourselves to be surprised And it's scary. I know it's scary, but to allow us to be surprised when your players have great ideas when they are put in tough situations, right? We want to create the problems, but we don't want to create the solutions. But the unwritten rule of us creating problems is to allow the players plenty of space to create those solutions. You know, if you had a great idea, hey guys, sunken city, swim down to the under, in the aquatic depths. You guys are going. I have a little small adventure. It's only like 5 to 7 rooms. You're going to go down there and have some fun. Oh, by the way, I don't think any of us thought about how difficult it would be, guys. If you guys come up with some great solutions, I'm ready to hear it. Right? That might be the very thing that and maybe some of the gifts, maybe some of the cool gifts from engaging in the world and engaging in the difficulties might be the wizard finds a spell that allows them to cast things underwater, or maybe there was a spell, maybe there was some kind of supplement that was written that has an air bubble spell in it. I don't know. Maybe I'm being sarcastic, but right. Yeah, and Rickard says, so sure, you give them disadvantage on their attack rolls, but you give their downtime role play more impact. Exactly. Maybe engaging in the world, like for example, um, much like much like using the exploration pillar, maybe the players are able to explore the under. Maybe it is far better for the players to run from a fight, get to that hidden grotto, and inside that grotto they find something that temporarily allows them to navigate more of this under aquatic world, right? So in essence, you are rewarding them for engaging in the world, even if temporarily, for them to get from one place to another. Maybe they get to the sunken grotto and they have to swim another half a kilometer to get to the sunken city, and they're all thinking, man, there's there's bloodthirsty sharks and fishmen hanging around. How are we going to do it? And then one of them is, the players are like, well, we can't fight them underwater because we're at a disadvantage, capital D, disadvantage to fight them. But maybe we can use some kind of camouflage, or maybe we could cause something that will cause them to go off in a random direction or something like that, right? And the rogue in the group goes, oh, I know. Since I'm sneaky, maybe I can give the help action to my party to have them sneak in the seaweed down deep in the bottom of the ocean and sneak around them. Maybe that's the better choice than the barbarian and the paladin pulling out their weapons and getting into a sword fight underwater. And sure, are you not killing your experience points? I would say what is experience but experience, right? Maybe we should actually look at what experience means, which is the experience of not getting in a fight and sneaking past those enemies might have been the better option, right? Ricker says, I would say as a DM, come on, kitty, not right now. Says, I would say as a DM, you should make sure you have a few solutions to the problem. To make sure there are some solutions, but be open to remake the encounter on the fly when your players come up with other solutions. Their solutions might not work with how you figured the logic would work, but you might be able to tweak the parameters so that it still makes logical sense for the scene. I cannot agree with you more, right? Maybe the solution would be, maybe the solution is, hey, if they get to the grotto, they find, I don't know, um, magical bottles that allow them to water breathe, and if they drink the water breathing potions in the small cavity of air, they can get to the dungeon. Right? That's the whole point. You're going to swim down to the grotto. PCs get to the grotto with plenty of difficulty. You drink the bottles, and that was your solution. But then one of the other players are like, I wonder if I could polymorph into one of the fishmen and convince them that I've got prisoners and I'm going to take the prisoners to the sunken city and use the dungeon master's like, I didn't even think about them polymorphing or using an illusion. That's still a great idea. Yeah, I'll let them do that. Right. So again, limitation. There's a reason why this episode's been called, this series, has been called limitations and micro worlds, not limitations in micro worlds, because sometimes we do have limitations and we have ourselves some fun with some of our micro worlds, and maybe those limitations, while on the surface are like, table flipping, maybe just maybe when we get into it, we there's something involved that really draws much more of what we're involved in, gets us more immersed in the gameplay, and hell, maybe we might burn some of brain cells and and come up with other ways other than I smite it with my paladin sword, right? But anyway, guys, I know I ramble. For those who don't know, I get up at 5:30 in the morning to prep the show, so I get a little bit loosey goosey. So I apologize for that. But tomorrow is World Building Wednesday, so we get to build ourselves a world of micro worlds and come up with some really cool, if somewhat harmful, limitations to include in it. I'm looking at you there, Planescape, and so maybe, just maybe, we'll create a world or worlds where the whole point of it is to get past these harsh limitations and let the players shine. So guys, anyway, you guys have a great one. I will be in the Discord for a moment or two and then get on out of here. Everyone have a great one. I will see you later. Bye. Thank you very much for joining me.